allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for coming. Big audience today. I need to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda for the workshop.
Motion to adopt the agenda for the workshop.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So passes 4-0. First item of business is the presentation of the police department total compensation plan. So,
Just real quick. Yes, everyone, happy to see everybody here. Before we started, I just want to share a couple comments. This is the first of two workshops that we'll be covering today. The first one is the consideration of the implementation of a structured pay scale for the Ocean View Police Department. Our goal is to wrap this first topic up by 1:45, at which point we'll begin the second workshop on how the town will utilize the remaining funds from our water distribution sale. So moving on to the first topic, in May of this year, we launched a police total compensation analysis with PFM Consulting Group. This effort was deemed necessary to be in a position to make educated decisions about the compensation package afforded the officers of the Ocean View Police Department at a time of high levels of competition for officers between departments, and also to afford our officers the opportunity to have a pay scale and therefore be in a position to forecast what their compensation would be. The information to be delivered has been shared in advance with our officers. The Chief McLaughlin, Finance Director of Parks, and I worked very closely with our consultants over the month since May. And as you're also aware, my recommendation regarding the outcome of this analysis is on your 3 p.m. council agenda for a vote. So moving right along, we have Ryan Chester here from PFM. He's Senior Managing Consultant to PFM to share the findings of the analysis and respond to questions.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Council. So my name is Ryan Chester. I work for PFM Group Consulting. I am a Senior Managing Consultant on our workforce practice. I work mainly in collective bargaining, compensation, and benefits comparisons. Most of the clients that I work with are in the Mid-Atlantic region. So that's Delaware, Maryland, DC, and Northern Virginia. So I'd like to walk through the police total compensation study that we did for you all. If you'll go to slide 2. So for the total compensation study, it was in an effort to support the fiscal year 2027 budget process and assess the town's current market position within its regional labor market. So the following slides are going to present Ocean View's compensation and benefits as compared to a group of peer towns and cities that are geographically close, operate within a similar labor market, and maintain similarly sized police departments. Ocean View's current compensation structure uses ad hoc annual wage increases that advance officers through their respective pay ranges, including several non-competitive promotions. Currently, when comparing base pay plus longevity, Ocean View ranks 4 of 6 below the comparison group median on a 20-year career average basis. The main reason for this is because Ocean View, unlike other jurisdictions in the region, they provide step increases and merit increases annually. So that is the main basis for that. We also looked at, and as reference from the police officers that requested, looking at a pay scale with 1.5% steps. When we look at that pay scale that we created with a starting salary of $72,000, Ocean View would improve its ranking to 2 of 6 overall. And that includes factors for health, leave, and other additional cash compensation. This 1.5% step increases aligns with pay practices across the region, where most jurisdictions provide between 1 and 2% increases. Ocean View's resulting market position generally aligns with its economic profile, which is above the peer city or peer towns, but below the peer cities, the coastal cities. Additionally, providing COLAs in the out years will help bolster the town's market position in out years. Most of the jurisdictions in the comparison group operate under collective bargaining, and usually that is accompanied with annual cost of living adjustments. Beyond just base pay, though, Ocean View provides competitive benefits, including the lowest employee contribution for healthcare coverage and generous vacation leave, further enhancing Ocean View's total compensation package. If you go to slide 3. So the contents of the study, the first section is just a review of Ocean View police officers' current compensation. It'll look at the rank structure, the pay ranges, and how you've historically given wage increases to officers. The second section is an analysis of the comparison group that we used in the study, looking at what are the factors that we considered for making the comparison group, and how does Ocean View compare on several lines of economic and demographic indicators. The next section is the comparability analysis that looks at Ocean View's base pay and longevity versus the comparison group, as well as additional cash compensation. The fourth section looks at health, retirement, and leave benefits. And then the last section walks through the recommendations of the study. I won't be going through every slide in detail as you've all received it in advance, but I will hit the main points of each of the sections. If you'll go to slide 6. This is a look at Ocean View's rank structure. So Ocean View has, what we'll call non-supervisory ranks. That's officer through master corporal. These is what we would consider non-competitive promotions. Non-competitive promotions have two main factors. The first is that they do not have a formal examination process, and they do not have a set number of allocated positions. So as long as an officer reaches the requirements needed for the rank, they will be promoted to that rank. This is different than the sergeant, lieutenant, captain positions within police departments. Sergeant is customarily the first line supervisor, and is often associated with a competitive promotion, including a promotional exam and a set number of positions. So if you have 10 sergeant positions and you currently have 10, then no one else can become a sergeant unless one of those positions opens up. If you'll move to the next slide, slide 7. This is just looking at the non-competitive promotions that Ocean View offers. They are generally tied with years of service. So an officer will move through each non-competitive promotion, typically receiving a 6% promotion every 2 to 3 years of service. If you go to page 8, you'll see that Ocean View maintains 5 distinct pay ranges for the police officer sworn personnel. The non-competitive ranks are all within grade 9. That's the 68,000 to 108,000 on the left of the chart. Grades 10, 11, and 12 are the sergeant, lieutenants, and captains. You can move to the next slide, is slide 10, or excuse me, 2 slides. And here is just a look at Ocean View's historical wages versus CPI, or a measure of inflation for the region. So you'll see 2 lines on this page, that they're 2 in blue. Those are representing Ocean View police officer wages. The dark blue line includes COLAs, pay scale adjustments, and non-competitive promotions that if an officer was to start in fiscal year 2020, I followed the non-competitive promotion schedule accordingly. I also wanted to show what the wage growth would have been without those promotional adjustments if it was someone who wasn't receiving those non-competitive promotions. And it still outpaces CPI, which reflects Ocean View's continued investment to remain competitive within the region. If you'll go to slide 11. This is looking beyond base pay. I wanted to get a sense of what Ocean View offers benefits wise beyond just base pay. So you'll see this chart. This doesn't say, say at the bottom, it says 138,000. That doesn't mean that police officers are receiving $138,000 in cash in hand. But we wanted to quantify the value of the benefits. So you'll see the average base pay is about 94,000. And then the next few sections are including overtime costs or overtime pay, excuse me. Health, which represents the average employer cost for fiscal year 2026. So this is the average cost that Ocean View provides officers, not exactly what Ocean View officers are paying for their health care benefit. The next is retirement. So Ocean View is contributing an additional 15.2% of pensionable compensation for officers to participate in the Delaware state plan for local police officers. And so this just quantifies that there are additional benefits that Ocean View police officers are receiving beyond base pay. If you go to page 13. This is the start of the section that reviews the comparison group. So when we typically do these studies, sometimes jurisdictions will already have a comparison group that they have compared to historically. Others will want us to generate a new comparison group. And so for Ocean View, when we generated this comparison group, we generally look at a few different factors. We look at the local labor market. Who are you competing with for talent? What's the population size of the different jurisdictions? What's the type of organization and the services they provide? And then we also look at demographic and economic indicators to see where the jurisdiction fits within your regional labor market. If you'll go to the next slide, slide 14. These are in a summary of the parameters that we used for the comparison group. The objective criteria that we used include a Delaware city or town in Sussex County within 20 miles of Ocean View, population of over 1,000 and under 5,000, and a police department size with between 5 and 25 sworn officers. And the chart on the right shows the towns and cities within Sussex County, their population, and the number of sworn officers as reported by the FBI crime data. And I've highlighted in blue the jurisdictions that we've included in the comparison group. So if you go to the next slide, slide 15, this is what Ocean View looks like compared to the comparison group. We have Dagsboro, Lewis, Milton, Rehoboth Beach, and Selbyville. You'll see that Dewey Beach, South Bethany, Fenwick Island, and Frankford, as well as Bethany Beach, are not part of the comparison group, given their small population. While not part of the primary comparison group, we also included comparisons for the Delaware State Police as a secondary point of reference for you all. You'll see that Ocean View generally falls around the median of the comparison group for these parameters. You go to the next slide. Looking at the economic and demographic indicators, the comparison group includes jurisdictions with a wide range of economic conditions. Median household incomes can range from $64,000 in Dagsboro to $141,000 in Rehoboth Beach. Ocean View's median household income, and generally across the board when we look at these economic indicators, is generally higher than Dagsboro, Milton, and Selbyville, but lower than jurisdictions north of the town or the coastal cities that have the distinct parking revenue differences with Ocean View. That would be Lewis and Rehoboth Beach, which generally have stronger economic factors. And so when we look at this comparison group, seeing that Ocean View is generally above the peer towns but below the peer cities, that's where we would expect Ocean View to sit with compensation and benefits. If you'll go to slide 20. This is the start of the comparability analysis, and this just gives a good overview of the police officer pay ranges that you see in the region. And so what I'm showing here is the entry rate for the entry-level police officer, and then the maximum of the highest non-competitive rank. And so for Ocean View, that looks like $68,000 for the starting rate, and then $108,000 for the top of the grade 9. And you'll see that, generally on the entry rate, Ocean View is pretty consistent with Dagsboro, Selbyville, and Milton, but a little bit lower than Rehoboth Beach and Lewis, which represent a little bit higher on the compensation, both on the entry and at the top of the scale. If you'll move to slide 23. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the methodology and how we compare base pay across the jurisdictions. So when we do this kind of analysis, we look at the value of a pay plan at a certain time. So for Ocean View, since this is in support of your fiscal year 27 budget, we are looking at wages effective at the end of your fiscal year, so 4/30/2026. And you'll see in the next pages that follow, we call these wage charts. And we look at the value of a pay plan at each year of service, where we would expect police officers to be as their pay plan. And so for jurisdictions with pay scales with steps, you would start at step 1 in the first row, and we would move them down each step for each year of service. Then we calculate a career average, which is located at the bottom of the wage charts. And this is a helpful figure to compare pay plans that move quicker or slower through their respective pay plans. So sometimes it may take an officer 30 years to top out of their pay scale. Sometimes it may take shorter. And so this average, we show 20, 25, and 30-year career averages. This just shows a helpful figure for comparing pay scales that move slower and quicker. If you'll look at slide 25, this is the results of your current pay plan. So we're looking at a 20-year career average, and Ocean View falls just below the median. The median is at 91,000, and Ocean View's 20-year career average at 82,000. So this ranks 4 of 6 and trails the comparison group median by 10.3%. Now, the officers were asking about a pay scale with steps, looking at the regional pay practices that most of the jurisdictions of the comparison group have these pay scales with steps. So we wanted to see what that would look like for Ocean View. So if you'll move to slide 27, it kind of explains what we did to do a scenario analysis, basically, of what it would look like. So we basically assumed it's using grade 9, the 68,000 to 108,000, and we assumed 1.5% increases, including the non-competitive promotions of about 6% until they max out. And so if you'll move to slide 29, this is the wage chart that I'm talking about. I know there's a lot of numbers on the slide, and please bear with me. I'll walk you through the chart and how to look at it. So each column represents one of the jurisdictions. So you have Ocean View, Dagsboro, and every column has one for each jurisdiction. Then each row is a year of service where we plot people on your pay scale. So for Rehoboth, they start at step 1, they move to step 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on until they max out at about step 30. And that includes non-competitive promotions, which most of them do. So Ocean View is all the way to the left, and you'll see that it starts at 68,000, and then each step is a 1.5% increase, along with the 6% non-competitive promotions where they come up in the years of service. And so you see they top out at the $108,800. And so if you look to the right, this is where we calculate some comparisons. So the first blue, the median is where we take the median of the comparison group, excluding Ocean View. Then the next few columns are Ocean View lead or lag. We compare Ocean View versus the median on a dollar basis and percentage basis. And then we do a rank of where Ocean View sits in the comparison group for each year of service. Then all the way at the bottom is where you'll see the career averages. This simply takes the average, 20-year career average takes the average of the first 20 rows. The 25-year career average is 25 rows, and 30 years the whole chart. And so you'll see if we assume the 1.5% step increases, Ocean View over a 20 to 30-year career would compare between 0.7% and 1.9% above the comparison group median. If you'll move to slide 32. This is looking at beyond base pay, so some additional cash compensation that officers receive. The ones that we benchmarked here are typical for police officer departments, especially in collective bargaining. You'll see shift differential, uniform allowance, holiday pay, and sometimes other allowances like fitness incentives, bonuses, etc. Currently, Ocean View's compensation aligns with the comparison group. But there are two fiscal year 2027 proposals that would further increase Ocean View's position within the market. So you'll see the first one is for shift differential. That's 50 cents an hour for hours worked between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. There's only two other jurisdictions in the comparison group that offer a shift differential. So if Ocean View were to consider this, they'd be one with Lewis and Selbyville that offer that. They would still be below Lewis is 75 cents per hour, but in line with Selbyville at 50 cents. For uniform allowance, typically for this region, it seems that uniforms are provided and there's not a lot of extra uniform allowance that's given to officers, except for in Milton, they have a $100 shoe allowance. In holiday pay, Ocean View is pretty consistent, 1.5 times pay for holidays worked. And other allowances, Ocean View would compare more favorably if they considered the fiscal year 27 proposal, which includes a $200 fitness incentive. So on top of the $350 holiday bonus, that would put you officers at $550 for that additional piece, which would be above Lewis, but still below Rehoboth. But it would still represent an increase in Ocean View's position. If you'll go to page 39. This is the start of the health, leaves, and retirement section. And this chart basically shows what health plans that are offered to police officers within the comparison group. So you'll see that Ocean View offers all of the four state of Delaware plans for local jurisdictions. However, not every jurisdiction offers all four plans. So Lewis and Selbyville offer all four, and Dagsboro and Rehoboth offer one or two of the plans. If you'll go to the next slide, slide 40. This is looking at Ocean View's current health benefits, the employee contributions as a % of the premium. You'll notice there's a little bit of a difference between Ocean View and the comparators in the comparison group. Ocean View requires officers to pay 4% of the health premium, whereas most of the jurisdictions use a buy-up feature where officers typically do not pay anything for the single coverage, but for the family coverage, they pay the % difference in those premiums. And so that percentage difference is what I'm showing for the other jurisdictions. So for example, in Milton, a police officer would pay $0 if they were under the single coverage for their the basic plan. But if they were to do the family plan, they would pay 50% of the difference between the single premium and the family premium. And Rehoboth actually doesn't offer the state basic plan, so I'm just showing the PPO plan here. If you go to the next slide, this is what that looks like in terms of actual employee contributions. So Ocean View police officers are contributing about $1,400 per year for family coverage, which is significantly less than the comparison group median. And then again, Rehoboth Beach doesn't offer the state basic plan, so I'm showing the PPO plan here. If you'll go to slide 43. This looks at the leave accruals for Ocean View. Ocean View police officers at entry receive 120 hours. So that translates to 10 days off. And that grows to 360 hours or 30 days off. In addition, officers receive 14 holidays. which co-lead or leads the comparison group, you'll see that none of the other comparison group reaches that 360 hours. You'll see some of the decimals for the holidays are because some of the holidays don't happen every year. So like Election Day and Return Day. So for Election Day, we're counting that as 0.5 because it happens every other year. And then 0.25 for Return Day. Basically, you would get a full day off every 4 years. So we count that as 0.25. And the next couple slides just look at the vacation hours at different career junctures. So we're looking at new hires at 120 hours, which is in line with the comparison group. And then once we hit 10 years of service, Ocean View police officers lead the comparison group at 240 hours. And then the last one at slide 46 is the 360 hours. Now we also took into account the shift schedules, and the story is still the same. And then if you'll go to slide 49, I'll talk about the recommendations for the study. And so the basic recommendation for the study is that Ocean View should consider implementing a pay scale with 1.5% steps, a starting rate of $72,000, and still include those non-competitive promotions that officers currently have. If Ocean View was to do this, it would better align Ocean View with the comparison group. Nearly all jurisdictions in the comparison group offer step increases between 1% and 2%. And typically a COLA is included for out years in collective bargaining. So Ocean View's compensation system in general does have the potential to be strong relative to peer towns. However, consistent progression through that pay scale is key to sustaining Ocean View's market competitiveness. And then if you implement those COLAs in the out years, that will help bolster the town's position before you come back in 3 years to do another evaluation of the compensation, just so that, if you don't provide any COLAs in the out years, you may have a bigger gap that you need to address if you come back in 3 years without having a COLA. The next slide is the draft pay scale that we made. So you'll see that the starting is 72,000 all the way at the top left. And for those of you who may have not seen pay scales before, each column is a rank in the police officer department. So you see officer, first class, corporal, master corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, captain are the supervisory ones. And so each row is considered a step. And so officers, would start at the 72,000, and then in their next year of service, they would move down one step to step 1, that's $73,000. In the following year, they would move over to the officer first class column. That would represent that 6% promotional increase. And in addition, they would receive an extra step increase, so they would move 1 step down. So you move over to the right and 1 step down. And they would continue that blue highlighted pattern until maxing out with master corporal, assuming they don't move on to become a sergeant. The next slide, slide 51, is what that looks like in the comparison group. If we look, and this is looking at the first day of fiscal year 27. And so if you look at the bottom right, Ocean View over 20, 25, and 30-year career, that would improve your position to just under 5% above the median. And this is where we would expect you all to be, given the economic and demographic indicators. The next slide on page 52 is kind of what the median versus Ocean View looks like. It's a little bit easier to look at. The blue line is Ocean View, and the black line is that comparison group median that you saw on the previous page. And you'll notice over an entire 25-year career, Ocean View under this pay plan is above the comparison group median. So in the last slide, 53, the summary, Ocean View's total compensation when you factor in pay, benefits, and leave is competitive within its peer group and reflects the town's commitment to recruiting and retaining quality officers. The proposed 1.5% step plan would align Ocean View with regional practices and provides predictable career growth. While the 1.5% COLAs for the out years would help protect the town's market position before the next 3-year comparability review. Benefits for Ocean View, as you've seen, remain a market strength with the lowest employee healthcare contribution and highly ranked vacation accruals. And so you see in the table, I've included rankings for each of the components that we looked at. For base pay, this 3 of 6 is reflecting the 1.5% proposed pay scale. That would be about 4.5% above the median. Other cash compensation, with the additional fiscal year 27 proposals, Ocean View would rank 2 of 6. And then they're tied for certain categories, like we went over the shift differential, which would be pretty much tied with Selbyville at the 50 cents per hour. On health, I've ranked you 1 of 6. That's just reflecting that police officers have the lowest employee contribution for family coverage. And then for retirement, I excluded that from the ranking because all the police officers in these jurisdictions participate in the same plan. So they all have the same benefits. And for leave, I've also ranked Ocean View at 1 of 6, although it's tied at entry hours is pretty consistent across the comparison group. And so an overall ranking, that would be 2 of 6, which you saw on the first slide. And this is just an average of 3, 2, 1, and 1, which is about 1.75. I rounded that up to 2. And so the last additional consideration that you all can think about is a compensation philosophy. That's the one I'll highlight here. Oftentimes jurisdictions will have a compensation philosophy. It's basically like a mission statement or value statement, where it defines what Ocean View is intending to do with compensation, that will guide compensation decisions. So if you want to include looking at, I know you all look at the CPIU as a factor for wage increases, that could be something that you can include in the philosophy. It's just an outward facing document that helps guide decisions. So thank you all for taking the time to listen to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Any questions?
No.
Go ahead, Mayor. Thank you. Just a couple. So 1.5% step increase, which is every year or every other year based on that. And when they're promoted from the non-competitive up to the sergeant, that would be a 6% increase.
That's correct. For the non-competitive promotions, it's a 6% increase. And then for the competitive promotions, we included an 8% increase to reflect the competitive promotion.
Say that again.
For the non-competitive promotions, it's a 6% increase. In years when officers would receive that non-competitive promotion, they do receive the 1.5% step increase, and they receive the additional 6% for the non-competitive promotions.
So you mentioned several times the out years.
Correct.
That the 1.5% step increase could occur plus a COLA. What do you mean by the out?
Out years is just a general term for farther than next year. So next year, I would anticipate the implementation of a pay scale. So officers would migrate onto the pay scale that Carol and Don have worked out. And then in fiscal year 28 and fiscal year 29, you would consider a COLA so that you maintain pace with other jurisdictions who are providing COLAs in those years.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Just questions. So if you're non-competitive and you're getting a step increase of 1.5, you would still get the COLA for that year.
Yes.
And if you got promoted, you could get the promotion increase plus the COLA for that year.
Yes.
When you're raising the entry level position from 68 to 72, does that push all other levels above it for that equal amount?
Yes, it does.
So we're not talking about just raising $4,000 to the entry level. We're pushing everything up by the equal amount.
That's correct.
You didn't mention that anymore.
That's what we do every time we've raised.
I understand.
This.
I got that, but you didn't mention that.
Sure, yeah, that means when we're raising the starting rate $72,000 from 68 to 72, all officers would receive that $4,000.
Okay, good. So that pushes all the other levels up an equal
Yes.
amount. Overtime, which is a budgeted amount that the chief and Captain Hall, and whatnot, they work out within their schedules and whatnot. We talked about 120 hours being a 10-day. What is the typical work week hours?
12 hours.
Each officer works, they work 12-hour shifts each time they come into work, and they work 7 days in 2 weeks.
And one of those days is an 8-hour day, but I would work 80 hours every 2 weeks.
Got it. But it fluctuates. One week it could be 3 days and the
Yeah,
next
one,
week.
one week you'll work, like say Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday,
Got
work
it.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then you'll come back the next week and work Wednesday, Thursday,
Very good.
and that'd be your 7 days in 2 weeks.
Okay. Which is 80 hours.
It's
General.
well, it's a 12-hour day, except for one of those days they call it flex day.
Okay.
It'll be an 8-hour day. And then that gives them 80 hours every 2 weeks.
Okay. What's the average length of time that a police officer stays with Ocean View?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. When's the last time that we had an officer leave that had any length of service? I know we had a young lady a couple of years ago that left, went to Selbyville or
Well, I
something,
was,
but she was.
to answer your question, you're saying you want to know when's the last time an officer left that had length of service? under
Yeah,
their
it has
belt?
some service in it.
I would probably say that was Lieutenant Burton left. He had about 8 years in,
Okay.
and he left for South Bethany, stayed with them for 5 or 6 years, and then came back to us and is currently employed back with us. And then also at the same amount of time, we had I believe at the time Corporal Norman went to Bethany Beach. He had about 6 years under his belt. So but the last officer that left, I believe, was Bowden.
So we had
In 2019.
Bowden, and then we also had Studis.
Yeah, Bowden and Spudis, they went to state police,
Okay.
and they each had about 5 years or so under their belt here at Ocean View.
So the last question. With any business, you have X amount of employees and you're always losing some. We have 14 count the chief. So the retention is pretty strong in Ocean View.
Mhm.
We can all say that. So it's hard to come up with a quantifiable number that you're gonna lose every year. I mean, I got 78 employees, I'm gonna lose X every year. I mean, it's just,
Right.
Boom. But we don't have, we seem to get great people and they seem to stay with us, usually speaking. All right, very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Lynn.
All right, moving on to the next presentation, the water distribution system sale is final. What's next? Utilization of remaining funds. Al Howard.
Bear with me as I get situated a little bit here. I got the glasses. Well, thank you and welcome to everyone and anybody that's listening on our YouTube channel as well. First, I'd like to introduce Garrett Moore. Jamie Schlesinger may be joining us. I'm not sure if he's on yet. But they're both consultants from PFN. And they have worked with us. You've met some of them before. You met definitely Garrett before when we were going through the water sale itself. Also want to introduce to anybody that doesn't know them, I think everybody does, but I'll say it anyway, Dawn Parks. Also, finance director who was very instrumental getting us to this point after 5 years of effort. We're going to try to move through this and then answer questions. And just for a bit of housekeeping, our next meeting, the regular meeting of mayor and council begins at 3 o'clock. As you know, I think we're on making good time, so I think we'll be in good shape. Wasn't sure how that would play out. Okay, so if we go to the first slide, please, Russ. I want to run through some background information before getting into the specifics of what's next for the town. Some of you are aware that we've been moving through a process to better understand our financial picture, both now and going forward. To that end, PFM was hired to complete an assessment of the town's financial condition, which was delivered in February this year. From my perspective, the timing couldn't have been better, as the sale of the water distribution system provides opportunity at a time when the town needs it. This assessment effort covered the full review of all of our financial considerations. It diagnosed our condition and then made recommendations that could enable us to move the town in the direction of remaining financially sound and stable. And at a time when the town is nearing full build out. We're a few years away from that, I would suggest. Most of you know that Ocean View made some great decisions years ago not to rely on its transfer tax revenues to cover the operations. These transfer tax funds that come from the sale of property changes annually and will certainly decline in the years ahead. In fact, we've already seen the reduction in recent years. So these funds are not suitable for operational costs, and that's because they just can't be counted on. So for good reason, Ocean View uses transfer tax funds to support its trust funds, the Street Repair and Replacement Trust, Emergency Reserve Trust Fund, and the Capital Replacement Trust Fund. This decision has served the town, the community well, and will continue to do so. But as fewer new homes are being built, this revenue will decline. The good news is our property values have remained strong, and property resales will continue to fund the trust funds. Plus, all of the other things that we're doing to be a top-notch, responsive town and improve the sense of community will assist in maintaining our property values going forward. And we will always be 2 miles from the Atlantic. I should note that the outcome of our financial assessment completed by PFM and discussed in February at the workshop remains available on our website, most easily found in the What's Happening scroll. The prime findings of the assessment were, from the diagnosis phase, we know that in the out years, without support from the general fund or limiting use for the intended needs, our trust funds will see deficits. We know we will need to rethink how we fund the trust, or it's going to get harder to maintain projects and infrastructure, as well as maintain our service levels without consistent tax rate increases. From the treatment phase of the assessment, we were presented some options. The first, maintaining at least one fund for budget stabilization. The second is to deposit one-time funds into our trust to provide a one-time boost in the funds available. Funds not suitable to funding operations, as they would not be consistently available. And lastly, to put guardrails on the use of the funds, the trust funds, which our existing trusts already have, and so should any new trust funds that we create. We know that the risk, we also found out that the risk we need to mitigate are, first and foremost, that we have a limited revenue options, with the primary being property taxes of all town properties. This is common among local governments, but some have other revenue streams that we don't have and likely will never have, such as parking meters, beach tags, hotel taxes, things like that. Another risk that we're reaching is that we're reaching full build out. And as already noted, the trust will see declining revenues. We know that the service demands and the cost of total compensation for employees will likely continue to increase, and that our revenue growth will lag behind our expenditure growth. So thankfully, we're recommending some items today to address mitigation of some of these risks today, and specifically in regard to establishing a tax rate stabilization trust, a fund to assist with budget stabilization, and also committing to near-term financial boost to our existing trusts. The last two recommendations here on the slide and underlined will be something that we'll be working on in FY 27 and bring to council at that time. Slide 3. Some background. So regarding the water sale, the sale of our water distribution system, the pipes and the grounds and the hydrants. Through negotiations, we reached agreement with Tidewater Utilities on a purchase price of $4.6 million. We then worked with the USDA and the Public Service Commission to get approvals of the sale. The engagement with the USDA, while ultimately very positive, took years, but we finally concluded the sale in April of this year. The information on the water sale, again, also still available on our website in the scroll section. The sales concluded and we had the public meetings leading up to the sale, so we're not going to cover all of those details because they're available to anyone that wishes to see them at this time. Slide 4. So now we're in the position to share that when all is said and done, the town will maintain $2,103,804 from the sale proceeds and from the system reserves. We anticipated this conversation, but we're not aware until more recently what the total of retained funds would be. And today, we hope to step you through what we feel are the best options for the use of these one-time funds. So in recap, the outcome of the sale resulted in $2.1 million being maintained by the town. This is a one-time influx of funds. All our debt has been paid off. The former town system customers are getting the same water from the same source, and now more direct customer service options from the same private utility that now holds the responsibility and the oversight. And Tidewater is regulated by the Delaware Public Service Commission. Slide 6. So we finally get to what's next. We're recommending that we use the tried and true focus of what's in the best interest of the town as a whole for this discussion regarding the use of these funds. While doing so, we are also attempting to develop a plan that will support the town's fiscal well-being with an eye towards our limited opportunity to create new revenue streams and to put processes in place that can be sustained. Next slide. We're in a position with a unique opportunity following the sale. Once we began to realize that there would be some level of funds that the town would retain after debt payoff, we put our thinking caps on, and of course, we looked back to the financial assessment that was completed earlier this year. The two prime considerations for the use of the funds are, first and foremost, the creation of the tax rate stabilization fund, and the second, providing the boost to our town's existing trust funds. Both, again, highlight that they were recommendations from our financial assessment. More specifically, we suggest $21,650 to be exact, be used to establish a tax rate stabilization trust fund. Support of this effort would see the mayor and council presented with the process and rules for this new trust by early next year in advance to the FY 27 budget. Likewise, it's being recommended that we funnel $300,000 into the capital replacement trust and the street repair and replacement trust fund for a total of $600,000. Page 8. If we do the math, that leaves $82,154 from the remaining funds of the sale, which I would like to leave available for consideration during the FY 27 budget cycle to help, if necessary, reduce any need for tax rate increases. We will begin this effort in earnest in January, and here today, I don't have enough information to tell you what would be the best use for those remaining funds, the $82,000. So what's next? What the heck is a tax rate stabilization fund? I know that might be on some people's minds. Well, we see it as a fund established much like our existing trust funds, with rules and guardrails for use that enables the town by recommendation of the town manager and the finance director during budget submission to draw from the fund to credit property owners for a portion of future necessary tax rate increases. We're suggesting that $1.4 million be used to establish this stabilization fund, and this money would be invested in the meantime. The $1.4 million amounts to 10 cents at the FY26 value of 1 cent added across the board to the tax rate. That's the right now FY26 that we're in. 1 cent on the tax dollar is worth 142,165. Times that by 10, you get the amount that we're recommending to start this stabilization fund. As an example, as we're finalizing a budget, we make cuts where we can. We determine our revenue needs and we complete our forecast for the coming year. Let's say, for example only, that we determine we need a 4 cent tax rate increase per 100 assessed value to raise the revenues to support our operations. The town manager and the finance director could recommend the use of up to 2 cents from the tax rate stabilization fund to support the revenue needs. The mayor and council will have the ultimate decision and vote, but we should all be held to the guardrails. We would, of course, provide justification and reasoning as always. If approved, like noted, that in this example, the tax rate would be increased by 4 cents, but the property owners of Ocean View will get a credit of 2 cents recommended during the year that it's implemented, and the credit would show on their tax bill. It will have a smoothing effect for our property owners while maintaining the rate that we currently need to support operations. We suggest the fund have a 2 cent max guardrail to preserve the funds for investment and future leveling. Plus, limiting to 2 cents per year allows for the fund to be reimbursed every 5 years as necessary to take it back to the 10 cents we started with during the charter required full town reassessment. Again, the funds would also be invested. Next slide. The second recommendation is the support of 2 of our existing trust funds, the Street Repair and Replacement Trust and the Capital Reserve Trust Fund, at $300,000 each. Doing so will assist addressing near-term funding gaps as we also evaluate strategic infrastructure funding plans in year 2026, as recommended also in our financial assessment. So with all that said, it's my recommendation that at the 3 p.m. meeting to follow directly after this workshop, Mayor and Council authorized me to begin the effort to implement a tax rate stabilization fund with seed money of $1.4 million, and also to move $600,000 from the water sale funds to support the 2 noted trust funds. There's the next slide was a thank you, but I'm going to move to, we added some slides on Friday in relationship to some outreach. So if we can slip to, I guess it would be 13, Russ, that would be great. So the next 5 slides that were added on November 14th in relation to suggestions that came into the mayor and council. So late last week, some questions came in regarding the use of the funds and suggesting that we return the remaining funds to those individuals that were on the town system. To that, I can share that there is no requirement to do so, and that the fees and charges were established in good faith and charged at the time of use for the water used by the property owner at that time. All the former town customers have been absorbed into the overall Tidewater system, and Tidewater is now responsible for repairs and maintenance. The transition was fairly seamless given the outsourced nature of the utility. Next slide. Taking some real consideration of the suggestion to refund those that were on the system, here's what we know. There's the fact that there was no buy-in to move into the overall Tidewater system. If returning funds made sense, there certainly likely would have been. Payments made to a water utility are time of use transactions, You have access to the supply, you use it, you're billed the going rate, you pay it, you use more water and you're billed again. We also know that when you sell a property, you don't get reimbursed for what you paid towards the system from the utility. But your property does have more value because of being hooked up to a public water supply and having access to fire hydrants. Again, public water systems provide benefits that are at the time of use. Yes, the fees include future maintenance, which are regular and customary across the industry. Next slide. We also know that utilities are not set up to provide a return on investment to each property owner, except to be there when you need it, much like insurance. When it might seem simple to just refund monies to those on the old system, I can tell you that I think it would not be simple at all. It would be a very big undertaking, determining who paid what, when, and what rates. Here's just some quick examples of the difficulties. If a property owner was here for a portion of time but sold, and now there's someone new at the property, how about each owner's payment history or lack thereof at times? What if the owner has passed away? Are we now tracking down estates of this deceased? If you suggest we should only give the funds to those that still own the property that were on the system, I think that would also set us up for some legal risk. But in all honesty, I have not spent time or town money exploring that. We're also aware of no legal obligation or ordinance that requires any requirement of service or facility fees paid by system users. Again, it's a time of use transaction. Next slide. So it's been suggested that when the town system was developed, that there was a decision made to not commingle water system funds and general fund monies. That's the correct thing to do when you have an enterprise fund. But with the sale, Ocean View no longer does. But we did maintain them separately until the sale. Statements made when developing the utility in that regard were appropriate. But no one that was here at the time contemplated a sale of the utility they were creating. And therefore, they also didn't contemplate any scenario for reimbursement of funds. We can't say now that the former leaders would have planned to give back these funds. It was never contemplated. So the past leaders of Ocean View made no decisions regarding refunding monies to former water customers. They only, and rightfully so, said we don't want you to commingle the funds, and that was correct when you had an enterprise fund. Not to mention that the town acted in the best interest of the town as a whole when it sold the utility. And we didn't go down the road to sell the utility with the goal of retaining funds. That's just how it played out. We sold the utility when it was still fairly young and in good shape. That was important to the outcome that we've had. And we eliminated all of our debt and risk for owning a utility for which we had no true oversight. Planning to not commingle the enterprise fund with the town's general fund does not translate to refunding money to the system users, especially for services rendered and water delivered. The staff recommendation, if acted on, will transfer a portion of the remaining funds to existing trust funds to provide a much needed boost and go towards the establishment of a new trust fund, that of the tax rate stabilization fund. And some might assist in the general funds if found to be necessary during our budget process. But I must note that many municipal utilities take margin transfers from their enterprise funds annually to support their general fund. So our FY25 audited financial statement contemplated us being here today to make these recommendations. The independent auditors have been aware of our intent and our efforts to sell the water utility from year one of starting the effort. The use of what they termed as unrestricted funds balance from the sale will be at the discretion of the town council. Again, we're charged with doing what's in the best interest of the town as a whole, and our recommendations for the use of these funds satisfy that premise. And lastly, I just would like to say that I appreciate everybody's effort paying attention during this and the many years that led up to this point. When the water system was created, it became a town asset. When we sold it, it was still a town asset. And the funds should remain with the town to do what's in the best interest of the community. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I can stay here, go back to my seat. We also have Garrett here. He's joined yet, but yeah. Yes, he is. I see him. He's in the corner. So we do have our two representatives from PFM who've been with us for these 5 years, getting to this point to help us answer any question from the public or the mayor and council. What's your pleasure?
I'll open it up to questions, but I have one question myself. So when we paid off the loan and USDA has informed us that all fees and other costs have been included. So that how did we get up to 2 million when we were thinking it was only going to be 1.4, 1.5?
Do you want
Do you want me to take that?
Dawn?
At the time, we have 1.4 in our water system in the banks. We did not anticipate that USDA would ask for less money than what the sale of the water system would be. They actually regarded the payback was less than the proceeds from the sale, so we had an additional amount from the proceeds of the sale.
They had a formula, actually two formulas. You could go two different ways. You may remember, I think we talked about both of them, but once we got to the very end, and we're able to plug everything in and they determined what their clawback would be, surprisingly so. And then after everything else had to be closed, different bills and things paid.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple, and excuse me, but they seem pretty simple. So you talk about this stabilization, tax stabilization fund, 1.4 million in change. And up to 2 cents based on the council going for a 4-cent tax increase. That 1.4 million will be invested how?
Just like we invest all of our trust funds,
Short-term notes,
we
money markets and things like that?
We have through our banking, we've had 2 financial advisors.
Okay.
And we give them the money and they invest either whatever is bringing in the best
Okay.
right now. Right now it's like short term.
Okay.
CDs are the route we're going with the money because that's bringing in more income than long term investments.
Do you think, or is your hope that this 1.4 million will last for years and years and years and years?
My hope is that it would. We always try to not raise taxes if we don't have to. And that it would be invested, so it'd be making money, hopefully. And that if we align it, and we're going into our next 5-year full town reassessment in FY27, so timing's very good with that. If we start with my idea, our thoughts are that if we start with 10 cents in this stabilization fund, and you can only use 2 cents a year, that you're going to get to that 5-year, and then we're going to be doing our full town reassessment, and that would be the way to pay it back, so that we can sustain it, and that we'd always have it as an option to cut off 2 cents of any future tax rate if we need it, and the mayor and council are so inclined.
So would this prevent at some point that fund running out where the homeowner would get saddled with an enormous tax bill because the 2 cents was taken up by the tax stabilization?
No, the reason we need to actually raise the tax rate 4 cents, even though they're going to get a 2 cent credit, is so that doesn't happen. Because the tax rate will go up 4 cents. But that year, there'll be a leveling effect to a give back of 2 cents, using that example. It could be half a cent, it could be 1 cent. but we're suggesting a guardrail of 2 cents so that money can remain in there to be invested.
And you mentioned guardrails, would this council set the guardrails and those guardrails could be changed by the next council? Or would this be codified, so to speak, and, you know, at the whim of the next mayor or the next council or whatever the case may be?
Ideally, it would be so that it can't be changed at a whim, not by staff or council, ideally. And that would be the next step where we bring to you all the guardrails, and then a final vote would come if you're so inclined to move in this direction. The trust that we have currently have guardrails, and the town has had success with those trusts, so you've had good experience. So I think we have some good examples to put to for why you wouldn't want to make a change so that we're relying on our transfer tax revenue, so to speak.
A couple more quick questions.
Can I just follow? up
Yes,
on
sir,
that?
please, sir.
So this is an example, the 2 cent, is.
Total example to
We
just
could
give
give
you,
less.
excuse me?
We could give less than 2%.
Yeah, I mean,
2 cents in a year.
we're not gonna know if we need 2 cents any given year until we start the budget.
So I would recommend that, one of the things that we look at is that if there's going to be a tax increase. And let's say it is going to be 2 cents. That 1 cent go from the taxpayer and the other cent go from the tax stabilization fund. Not that all of it would pay for the tax that year.
Well, that, absolutely, that, anything up to 2 cents would be, if we went with a 2 cent guardrail.
Town council would determine.
We would make a recommendation, just like we do when we give you the budget. We need this much tax rate increase. We recommend you use 1 cent from the stabilization fund or whatever, up to 2 cents is what we're suggesting. And again, it aligns well with the every 5-year full town reassessment. So anything, unless somebody wants a different kind of guardrail, other than 2 cents, if you want 1 cent, if you want, you know, more than that, I wouldn't suggest it, but you might. We would have those conversations during the budget, but we would make the recommendation first to you, like we always do,
Thank you.
based on the budget.
So, based on your scenario, 1.4 million set aside. If there was a 1 cent tax increase for that year, it would be 184,000 or
Well,
42 out of that.
That's this year, FY 26, every year,
So
every time every year we get the value of 1 cent. We understand that.
trying to visualize
Yeah.
how long that fund's gonna last.
And it has gone up every year. I can't say what it's gonna be for this year yet, but the coming budget year, but when if you like the idea, if you like this idea, the goal would be to understand what 1 cent of a tax, because people can understand that, okay? And when we do our next full town reassessment, 5 years from FY 27, let's be honest with everybody. We don't have a lot of revenue streams. So if you want to have a mechanism, the best time to do it is when you're doing your full town reassessment. What did you use of those funds that were set aside? How many times did you do 2 cent tax rate credits? And then pay it back. So now you have something to give back to our property owners, because there's nowhere else it's coming from. It's either coming from them, gross rental receipts. You know, there's not. We've been racking our brains. Resale, well, transfer tax, the resale, that funds are
That's not for
correct.
operating, but that does help replenish the trust funds.
It does.
And 65% of the sales in this community are through resale.
Yes. Thank goodness
Yes.
that's still trending that way. So this is an option for our future. We don't have other revenue streams. If we think it's important that we maybe are in a position to be able to help the property owners, if and when we need tax rate increases, and we will, then this is an idea for us to consider.
Just another question. So as far as investing, is it a big deal if the market swings to say change couple year and a year change and then another year change again because the market swing? Is that a big deal? Is that a costly thing to do?
I mean, it will.
It does cost you.
If it's down, yes, we won't make as much money. So when you do your next full town reassessment, maybe you're gonna have to put more into it.
But I'm saying the cost of doing that, it could be a decent amount of money. So if we're doing something and say the market goes very strong next year, and then 2 years down the road, it's now going sideways somewhat. The back and forth stuff, is that costly?
I'm not sure if I'm understanding. the
Cost of
question.
doing it.
The cost of doing it? No, no,
Still doing
I guess to
And
invest.
to invest, isn't there fees and stuff in charge of that, or no, it's just our money to do as we so choose?
very, very minimal fee.
Okay.
We don't pay very much in fees at all.
Okay,
If it's money market, there is
Interest
no.
is totally ours.
if it's money market, yeah.
And keep in mind, and again, this is what we thought of, we're constantly thinking of ways, trying to think of ways that we can buffer. Of course, we've talked about doing incremental tax rate increases, 1 cent every year, just to not have to do a big one later on. But if you think about it, the timing's good again. We're going into our next full town reassessment. If we had this fund and it starts with 10 cents, today, this year's value of 10 cents, and we only use 2 cents or whatever is needed and decided, then you come to your next 5-year reassessment and you can reimburse it. Okay, think about how our emergency reserve, we have to keep that at 20% of the budget. So when we do the budget every year, we one of the first things Dawn does when we know, all the monies that are available is what do we have to put in to make 20% of the budget. So those kind of conversations and discussions and forecasting are going to be going on all year.
It's important to let the people in the town understand what we're doing too, because this is different.
It's different.
Because you see other municipalities, which I won't name,
We don't know anybody who's done this.
no, but I'm saying we have other municipalities who struggle with their budgeting process, putting stuff out there that's not attainable. So when you don't attain a budget, it has to come from somewhere. So certain municipalities have gone right to the people and say, hey, increase, done, can't do it.
Well, and I'll tell you, what some places do, and this is not just locally, they create a fund where they can pull when they need it, so they don't have to raise taxes, okay? It may even be called a tax rate stabilization fund or something similar. But they don't raise the tax rate. So you're gonna have that time down the road where you're gonna have the big tax rate increase, which is what we're trying to, what
Correct.
people tell you they want in local government is they want a stabilizing. They don't want to have this big surprise down the road.
No.
And that's what we think this affords us, the opportunity.
Carol, are you locked into 1.4 million? Can it be less? There's a couple things that I firmly believe on getting more money into the street repair trust fund. I just think there's some projects, I don't know this for a fact, but maybe Mr. Simno can mention. I'm thinking with government shutdown, winter, economy not doing so well, our purchasing power to do some of these projects might be increased. Yay, nay? Pie in the sky?
Well, what we have found in the last projects that we have advertised, they have come in well under the engineer's estimate. And what we're hearing from our colleagues at DelDOT and at the Maryland Department of Transportation is that construction funding in their agencies is scarce. And very few projects will be getting put out in the next fiscal year. We, in fact, had just advertised and awarded a very small project, $250,000 project. And we had 7 general contractors bid on the project. And the project came in 15% under the engineer's estimate, about $35,000 under the engineer's estimate. So we anticipate moving into the next calendar year, that we'll have more buying power with our dollars because the work is very scarce.
And to answer your question, I'm not committed to that. That number is 2 cents on the tax rate for the next that's where I came with that number. But I also can say that this coming budget year, we also know that we have more than we need in our unassigned fund balance.
If you do the 1.4 in the general fund though, if you need it for the street repair, can you use it out of that fund?
We could always, but that's not traditionally how we do it. We have our
So if you move
street
it
repair.
all to the general fund. That's not an avenue we can go down. If you needed it for some special street repair.
If it's not already committed to something else,
Yeah.
we can always make recommendations to move things around. We're saying to put 300,000 to the streets. And then what I'm saying is that what Dawn and I are already eyeballing right now, because remember when we had our audit, the auditor said you got too much in your unassigned fund balance. Well, I have to say with a caveat that we also, and we've said this to you, and we're not making a decision on this now, is that our future will involve some borrowing likely, okay? Strategic borrowing that is paid for from trust funds. Not talking about that in detail today. We're going to talk about that, in next year. But we do believe that taking some of the money from the unassigned fund balance to go to the infrastructure in FY 27 is very likely. Okay, without stripping it bare.
Because our purchasing power, as Mr. Semino said, is really great. The prices are down.
Yep.
There's the projects we need to giddy up on that have been delayed for whatever reason. And, the one thing that towns get upset about, they want stabilization, but they want to see stuff.
Yeah.
Unconnected sidewalks and drainage and things of that area. This man needs to be, juiced a little bit to get some of those projects underway. That's the way I feel.
I agree.
Also, there's a couple things that I'd like to see, Matt, maybe, a salt barn, or house with, if he put a lift in there to start doing some maintenance on our oil changes, things of that nature, which would save us in the long run. Because if we're gonna get this funds, it's a one-shot pony, those things last for eternity, if you will. And that's what excites me, as well as the stabilization fund. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, but I would say that if we add too many different things onto this package that we're looking at, it reduces the value of that package.
Well, I absolutely agree. I think putting in the two funds that she had mentioned, Carol had brought up, which would be the street repair trust fund, that's already one of them. Then the capital replacement trust fund, maybe some juice into those funds, not adding more funds to that list. Sir, thank you.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I anticipate that we're going to add more during the budget process from unassigned fund balance to those as well.
Any other questions?
No.
I'd like to open it up to the public. If you have any questions or comments you'd like to make? Please state your name and your address.
Good afternoon, I'm Lee Brubaker. I live at 10 Elliott Avenue here in town. Firstly, full disclosure, my property is on the town water system, as are a couple of others too. And secondly, selling a water system was absolutely the right thing to do. So well done you. Well done you. It was a lot of work and it was the right thing to do. I made the statement, I think I was the first one to opine on it about 2 years ago when you were holding the informational meeting, that there was no benefit to the town or to the water system users for the town to be involved in the water system. In fact, I just looked in your fiscal 26 budget, over $266,000 was charged to the water system for town payroll benefits and payroll taxes. And that was for work you couldn't do for the town because you were doing it for the water system. So we've got that all out of the way. So that's great. I was busy over the weekend and sat down yesterday to look at Carol's response, November 14 response to my November 13 response. And I started responding to that. Woke up this morning, slept on and woke up this morning and said, there's no point in playing, getting in a keyboard wrestling match. So I'm just gonna let my comments stay where they were. I wrote them out. I said them. I don't agree with everything you've said, but it's not my decision. I don't get a vote in this. I'm just one guy that happened to work on the water system for quite a few years, had the agony of helping set it up, like you had the agony of helping to sell it. And I can only imagine what that was. So I'm just gonna let my November 13 comments stand on their own. I don't have a vote. It's your decision. I just want to remark that financial statements and the footnotes say that oftentimes financial reporting requires estimates and judgments. Therefore, accounting and recording decisions require estimates and judgments. With a bunch of years in public accounting, auditing major corporations, public companies, small companies, made a bunch of those. So that's my opinion, that's a decision that's up to the five of you. That's a decision you have to make. So thank you for reading my missive, and Carol, sorry that you had to do some more slides for your shows. I will end with my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
Seeing no other comments, I need a motion to avert. We have to provide direction to the town manager regarding proposed items.
Not till the, yeah. Have any no, yeah, that's,
Okay, then we'll
I
do
mean,
that later.
my recommendations on the regular meeting.
Okay.
So, if you have any questions of our consultants, while we're here, we want them to stay for the meeting. More questions when we hit these topics on the regular meeting.
Well, I don't know if we have any questions, but you're welcome to stay as long as you want.
Really brought in great information.
Garrett, anything that's lingering, anything you'd like to?
No, I would just echo the comments that have already been made that, it really is a testament, obviously, to Borough Council as well as, Carol and Dawn. I mean, again, I just thinking back, I think we were initially engaged, I want to say like November, December of 2020, and the goal was to have the sewer system, or excuse me, the water system sold by the end of the fiscal year, March 31st of 2021. Obviously, that came and went. The next fiscal year came and went, through no fault of anyone kind of in this room. It was just, we were having to work through the process. We're uncovering, additional stones and ultimately having to run it through the USDA, which turned out to be a little more of a bear than kind of we all anticipated. But truly a testament, and kudos to Dawn and Carol as far as really spearheading it, bird dogging it, and making sure that it got completed, because again, I also believe it's in the best interest of the town as well, speaking just for me personally.
I have one comment, just if it's okay with me to jump in from the community gallery.
Back in 2000s, worked tirelessly on this. Too many meetings, and took a lot of heat from the public, and a lot of thank you. And I don't think his value to the town has always been understated, not by me, on the work to get this done, and I respect his comments and his letter. But thank you.
Any other comments?
No.
If not, I need a motion to adjourn.
Jamie,
What?
Jamie, did you have anything you wanted to add? I'm sorry.
If you can hear me okay, my only comments would be related to the overall picture of the reserves of the town itself going forward. how you are ultimately adjusting or putting together a trust. It's important to note when we go to borrow in the future, the fund balances and reserves are so important for your ability to have strong buying power when you go to the credit rating process. Your town, when we had it assessed back when we did the bond issue to refinance the USDA loan, was surprisingly as strong as I could not believe at a AA plus. That's one notch below AAA. Our goal would be to have you in a position where when and if we go back to the public markets, you have that same strength to you. So I think it's really important to keep in the back of your mind that these, reserves and in different ways how you do it are certainly going to provide you a value in the future when you do go back to the debt process, and that will save taxpayers money going forward as well.
Thank you. All right, now we need a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
All right, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
My vote so passes. We will reconvene at 3:05.
Praise the Lord.